Hello, I'm Preston Laxa, a Filipino homeschooler based in Jeddah, Saudi Arabia. To give a background on what I'm going to share, um, I'm going to be, uh, I guess, giving a breakdown or creative process breakdown on a video I did a couple of months ago on a channel that I have, a YouTube channel, which is just basically, it's like it's a simple channel. It's like a space where I share my personal thoughts on things, on topics, on themes that I find intriguing, you know, about society and the world and things like that. I'm just gonna start sharing my screen.
We are like little lanterns. Our lives so fragile, paper thin, easily torn by words and actions. We are empty, with nothing to show, and nothing to give, unless someone else lights us up. And we spend our whole lives searching for that one thing that can fill the void inside of us. We idolize the thought that it might be filled only with all the gold and money the world can buy. Or it might be filled with the social acceptance that we so desire to have. Or it might be filled with the deceptive love we want from the one who we think feels our pain. Our infatuated lover. This hollowness we feel, molded into existence by adversity, is reinforced every time we fall and stumble in the pits of detriment, arduous to get out of. However, God says no. No, He doesn't see our emptiness as our greatest problem. No, He sees it as His greatest opportunity. For God works best with empty. Think about how all of this started in Genesis. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Now the earth was formless and empty. Darkness was over the surface of the deep. Even at the start, God never saw emptiness as a problem. But when He spoke, it was filled with light, with life, and with love. He gave our lives meaning, but God didn't stop there. It was not until thousands of years later did He show us His true work, the plan that pointed towards Jesus. For Jesus filled the greatest emptiness there was, greater than the void in the beginning. For He filled the void between us and God, the void that was set there because of our sin. And even Jesus didn't stop there. Jesus fills the void inside of us with light. He is the one who makes us whole. And His light? Well, His light shines brighter than the glow of all the world's gold. His light's warmth and grace is an acceptance that runs deeper than society's false glory. And His light is a gift that surpasses the intimacy we crave from our significant other. For this light is a light born out of sacrifice, a sacrifice born of love. A love He had in His being before any of us knew our names, because He knew ours. He knew it when He wholly crafted you and me fearfully and wonderfully. This is a love that He unconditionally gave to every single one of our empty souls, so that we'll forever be in the light that He has always shown.
I'm just so curious. First of all, wow, that's beautiful. I'm curious to know what your process is. Like, do you start with the poetry and then find the visuals? Like, what's the order or sequence
I see.
to create that?
Actually, I have a presentation, and I think I'm going to share that. It's just,
I'm sorry.
It's not really a big presentation. It's not really a big presentation. It just helps with the organizing of my thoughts. So I'm
I
just gonna
so relate. I appreciate
yeah.
that you're so prepared.
Thank you. All right. Thank you. Yeah, so just to give a background again, this what do you call this? This channel is like a space where I share my Christ-centered thoughts on different topics and things like that. And now this video specifically, this is my channel intro or my channel, um, yeah, it's like the first video of my channel. So it didn't really touch on any topic yet, but I was trying to, give a foundation for the kind of topics I would present in the future. And so yeah, my basic creative process breakdown. Um, Now, of course, the first thing that comes to mind is the theme, right? Like, what do you actually want to talk about in the video? Because especially on YouTube, the pattern that I've seen with great videos is that they have what do you call it, a clear and coherent theme in what they want to talk about. So it's not like scattered, unlike other, I guess, sources of what do you call this? You could say, yeah, other streaming places like podcasts and things like those, where there's not really that much structure. When it's just like a free discussion, but with on YouTube, with what I've seen, it's more of I guess you could say, I mean, on my end, like with the videos that I watch, it's sort of like short films in a way, but that's just me. So the first thing that I had to tackle was a theme. And now the theme was not that hard to pick because it's the channel intro. So it's supposed to talk about the channel. So that was an easy theme to pick. But then the next problem that I had to tackle was what was the script. And now what you said about the poetry, that wasn't actually poetry. It's just I think that was actually supposed to be prose, but since I'm actually more of a poet. I'm a poet that likes writing in prose. I guess I kind of get some of those poetic attributes and sort of what do you call this? Usually inject it, when I'm writing in prose a bit. And so that was one thing that I tackled, which was the script. And now the main problem with the script, right, that I what do you call this? That I faced was that how was how it was going to what do you call this tie in um, with the theme at the same time how it was going to fit with all of the other elements because there's also video, right, and there's also music and all those things. So I had to choose a script that was not too long because then my music would I would take such a long time with the music that I wouldn't have time to actually make the post production for the video, and I wouldn't have that much, or it would be harder for me to gain that much material, visual material, for like the clips, the scenes, and all that stuff. Which leads me to my next part with what helped or what was the driving force of my video, and that was symbolism, right? Because in my personal opinion, the script and the visual should work hand in hand, and I tried to do that through symbolism. That could be through, of course, because this is actually my first film, and when I made this, I didn't really have that much experience with film since I was trying to try out a new art form. Because before that, I was not really a filmmaker growing up. I was more of a writer, more of a painter, more of a musician, and then I wanted to try out this new art form, which is film. So I came in. I came in empty-handed, with my knowledge, and so this video is the first product of that empty-handed knowledge. So I tried to so that's why you know um, my main learning from that was through experience. And now of course, because of that, because it's my first film, you don't really have that much control over what do you call this, over that many things in your film, in the sense that what makes great films, like for example in Hollywood, what makes those great Oscar-winning feature films is that the directors have so much control over their films, which includes lighting, which includes the, what do you call this, the locations, which includes the actors, which includes the production, the set design, and all that different things. But then when you go to like, on a more personal scale, which is my scale, where there's no budget, we're not, we're not using any money here. Of course, we're just using like the things that we had at home. You don't really have much control over like the lighting, of course, like the weather and things like those. So I really had to make do with what I had. And in that case, because of that, I had to move on to the tactic that I thought would substitute for lack of control, which is symbolism, or trying to use, which was me trying to use the already, what do you call this, the materials I had to symbolize the things that I was trying to say through my script, which were like through trees, through the lamps, of course, lanterns, lamps, they're synonymous. So I tried to incorporate that as it was, the channel trailer and all. So yeah, and symbolisms mainly was the driving force of my video. And what do you call this, moving on from symbolism, what makes a good story with symbolism are through motifs, right? And now I use motifs throughout the entire video. Basically any shot that you see there is either is a motif, whether it's a last stage or it's like the first stage of it. And I guess what I try to do there is create a sense of story or a sense of movement through the motifs. For example, if you noticed the shoes on the ground, I just videoed them. And then since what do you call this, a theme, right? A theme on my video was about growth. I had 3 separate shots on my of my feet, of my shoes, on gravel, and then on soily, sort of grassy, on a sort of grassy, I guess, landscape. And then after that was a really grassy landscape. And so I use those like kind of simple scenes, simple shots to try to create symbolism or to create motif on growth, since I didn't really have that much control, right? So I had to make do with what I was doing. And because of those motifs, over the course of 3 minutes, which was the time length of my video, I had, or what greatly helped with the movement of the story was through contrast, right? Contrast through motifs, since that's what motifs really give, is that motifs give contrast based on the context it is presented in. So now, and like, of course, in the first part, I presented like sort of negative. I had a negative script in a sense that it wasn't really that positive yet. So I tried to attach that first motif with that script. So then when it came to the end, which was like a more positive end with a positive script, I had that same contrast with the same motif in that end with a positive script. So, it's that type of black and white thing that really helped drive my video forward, or at least I hope drove my video forward. And now this one was actually an interesting subject, which is music, because I also composed the music in this video, because as I said, before I was a filmmaker, I was also a musician. So I really wanted to incorporate that background of mine into the, making my first film. And that this one was a tough one, because as a musician, you want to like, what do you call it, make it avant-garde, make it grand, make it extraordinary, with like 15 different instruments and all that things. But then with this one, because in film all the things have to work together, I had to cut down on all of those. Why? Because as an artist, and as in this case a sort of pseudo filmmaker, I had to ask myself, how well will this fit into the theme or the story I'm trying to tell, right? And now so I asked myself, will like complex compositions help, right? And in this case it didn't, because I tried that first, but it didn't really work, because it's kind of weird having a complex musical piece, but then, you know, it was, what do you call this? What do you call the you know, the script was more emotional, more centered on what do you call it? Yeah, internal topics and things like that. So I didn't try to get I didn't go too crazy with the music. That's why I had to make the decision of making it simple, making it sort of direct, and making it in a sort of call and response way. You know, if you know call and response in music composing, it's when you play something and then on the next measure, it'll the notes that'll be played will be sort of in contrast or in a response, sort of like having a conversation with each other. So I had to use that in my music making to also further emphasize my motifs, and the contrast that I brought in the film. The next up is color. Okay, and now this one is not really the biggest part. It's not really a big part of my film because, of course, um, because this is, you know, a first time film, I didn't have that much control. So with that premise, you don't have, you know, that much control over weather, over how much sun you have, over what time of day you're shooting. Although, you know, because mainly I'd like, you know, revise the script in the morning because, you know, I already needed to do that, and then I'd only have time to like shoot at the night, since, you know, I made a personal deadline for myself on when I should finish this project. And so, you know, I only had limited options then. Although I tried to maximize it by having color that was simple, like it's not like extremely, I guess you could say, colorful like a rainbow, but it had simple colors. But, you know, I tried to make it still memorable with having not that contrasted colors, with, however, it's vibrant and it's has lots of saturation, which is, you know, I sort of drew inspiration from a pseudo, you know, Wes Anderson film style filmmaking, which you know, is one of my inspirations when making this film. Right. And now moving on, this is my last thing that I had to deal with, was that now once I've made the music, once I've made the script, once I've made the theme, once I've made the colors, and of course the visuals, which was through contrast and motifs and all that stuff, what then the question I asked myself, in what way would I want to present it? And that was through the atmosphere, or, you know, that's what I would question myself, was what atmosphere would you want to bring to the audience? And now one thing that I saw as a problem was that full screen, like it goes full angle, wide angle. Yeah, the wide angle ratio, which is 16:9, which is like, you know, the ratio of this presentation, would be hard in my case of like a no budget film, since, you know, I didn't really have control over my surroundings. So instead I chose a 4:3 aspect ratio, so that the subjects that I were, you know, was closing in on were just, you know, those subjects and like nothing else. So like when I was filming the lamp on like the park, you know, I wouldn't get like any people walking by, or, you know, some stray cats, some bushes I didn't want. So that 4:3 aspect ratio really helped in the concentration and in the value I put in on the subjects of my, you know, that I put on my scenes, for my scenes, I mean. And so because of that, I that was the aspect ratio that I chose. And now the other thing, yeah, that was not that small, but, you know, I like quote unquote, I don't want to, this is actually a misuse of a word, a misnomer, but the aesthetic vibe that people call nowadays, which is just basically like VHS style, you know, filmmaking, where it's a bit grainy, where it's sort of like that old timey feel, you know, when using film, because there's film grain and all that kind of stuff. And so I kind of incorporated that into the film, because that's the vibe that you get along with the 4:3 aspect ratio, because the 4:3 aspect ratio was used in like the really old films back in the day, like 1940s, 1950s, and things like that. So I tried to create that sort of old-timey vibe with the film grain and all that stuff. And so yeah, that's this is the end of my presentation, and I wanted to end with a quote that I think would help the the artists out there, or the people who want to make their own films. Of course, I'm not really good at making films, but just in general, those artists there, right? Is a quote from Little Prince, where a rock pile ceases to be a rock pile the moment a single man contemplates it, bearing within him the image of a cathedral. So, these are one of my favorite quotes, because The Little Prince by Antoine Saint-Exupéry is also one of my favorite books. And now, this quote, for me, what do you call this, represents the childlike imagination we have in all of us. And that's the main thing that I try to use. That above all else, I try to have a childlike imagination when filmmaking, even though I didn't have that much experience. And even though, this was a completely new field to me. So yeah, this is a breakdown of my creative process.
Fantastic. I can't imagine what you'll achieve if this is only your first film.
Oh yeah, and I'm currently working on a second film, because yeah, this one's gonna be like poetry. It's really gonna be poetry. So I wrote spoken word poetry for this. So I was gonna this is gonna be my idea for a next video, spoken word poetry. Since the first one was prose, so the second one will be poetry. So yeah, thank you.
Well, keep going, Preston. Keep going. You seem unstoppable. Thank you for sharing this with us today. So
thank you. I'm so honored to be here.
Amazing stuff.